Welcome, everybody, to another Dave Cooper live show. And we are hot off the press. You know it. The International Builder Show 2023 in Las Vegas. There's the camera. Don't know what happened with that, but thank goodness it popped back up. We got a special guest today. We have our good friend Tim Sims, who is going to be joining us in just a moment. And we are going to talk about what we thought was good, bad, or indifferent at the International Builder Show. One of us may have a special opinion that won't even make sense to you. Doesn't make sense to me, but that's what he's looking to do. But before we get into all of this fun and we talk about all the great things that we both saw at the International Builder Show, we got to say a quick shout out to our sponsors. So here we go. Carson Holmquist and the team at Stream Logistics are experts in high-stake freight. They are the perfect choice for projects with timelines and a specific delivery sequence, shipments with high complexity and unique constraints. The new methods of construction need new transportation solutions, and they are up for the challenge. Visit them at streamlogistics.com. CombiLift is the largest global manufacturer of multi-directional forklifts and straddle carriers, a leader in long load handling solutions, offering a free warehouse and site optimization design service. CombiLift helps companies of all sizes and from every industry maximize the capacity, safety, and efficiency of their warehouse and storage facilities. A big thank you to Paul Short and the team at CombiLift for helping us all to build it better. Visit them at combilift.com. Brave Control Solutions, where offsite manufacturing systems that do more than just improve productivity. They have a unique approach to industrialized construction, a lineup of flexible automation systems specifically designed for the construction industry, empowered by CAD to Fab, and turnkey solutions for 3D volumetric assembly, structural insulated panels, finished wall assemblies, MEP component processing, assembly, kitting, and storage. Learn more at thinkbrave.com. All right. Gotta love our sponsors. Saw them all at the International Builders Show doing what they do best, and that is supporting the building systems industry. So before we get into it, let's bring Tim Sims on. What's happening, Tim? How are you?
Hey, hello from Cozumel. It's good to be back home, but it feels like forever since we had breakfast together at IBS.
I think it was only like 2 days ago, but yeah, if you say so, it does feel like forever, especially when I'm in cold weather and you got the beach sitting right outside your window.
Oh man, yeah, it's really actually a little overcast today, and there's been some rain, but it is really nice. But I think time in a lot of ways in our industry and just in the world just feels like it's moving at a different pace than I remember it. And maybe this is what my dad was talking about. You know, when you get older, son, you'll understand.
That's exactly it, right? Time is flying by. The kids are growing up so fast. The industry is changing every day. People are getting bought up. Companies are being sold, and new companies are coming on the market each and every day. So, Tim, I know you're in stealth mode, but you've been in stealth mode for 3 years. In fact, that should be the name of your new company. I keep telling you, Stealth Mode Tim. In fact, we even have an emoji of a ninja there for you today, which we'll put up there. But why don't you take 2 minutes? Why don't you tell everybody about who you are, what you do, and what you're up to these days, and then we'll hop into our conversation. Sound good?
Yeah, you bet. I guess I'm in the fourth chapter of my career in building materials. I started out in construction, multifamily, single family, commercial, and then went into building materials sales, eventually marketing and purchasing. And then the last roughly 15 years before this, I was at James Hardie and Nichiha. And in Nichiha, I really got interested in modular offsite prefab, industrialized construction, in the sense that it was being used and so well adopted in Japan. And so basically took what knowledge I could gather there to building materials here in the US. And now I'm an independent consultant in the industry, helping building product manufacturers and building companies like mass timber, 3D construction, modular, volumetric, panelized, CFS. All of them connect together and start to collaborate with R&D and new products. And we're seeing a lot of that now. So that's what I'm enjoying doing now. And then my stealth mode project is still in stealth mode. I'm trying to buy the domain. I haven't been able to get stealthmode.com, but I hear Stealth Mode Tim is probably available. I haven't checked that one yet, but yeah, thanks for the intro.
Stealth Mode Tim. And you're not going to tell us? Come on.
Good music for that. That was a great sound.
Hey, so I know. This is awesome. It's always so much fun when we get to hang out, and you do have a lot going on. You have a lot of experience, in the products industry. You have a lot of experience in the building systems industry, offsite construction, industrialized construction, whatever it is we call it these days, right? I know people have named it, but nobody's using any of them at the moment. They're using all of them.
We have all our prefab children names.
We do. I mean, think of it that way. That's exactly it. It's like we're running a shelter. So we got a shelter for all the prefab names out there, and we'll keep running with it. But you have a ton of experience in the R&D side. You have a ton of experience in understanding how those products fit into the manufacturing world, whether it is modular, mass timber, and what have you. So, but we're here to talk about the International Builder Show, right? We're here to talk about all the great things that we've seen, at least I've seen. What did you think was the greatest part of the International Builder Show?
I thought, well, I have just one disappointment. It was I did not get to see my friends Sean Shield, Tim Aspinwall, and Chris Tachi. That I tried to get to the different things. So much to see. It was the biggest takeaway is everyone's been asking me is it was just electric. I've never felt the IBS show like that. I've been going to that since 2003, and only missed 1 year. And I really feel like it was pretty special. And I was really surprised that even though there was a lot of the same stuff we've seen for years, that it still had that sort of basis in like a very dynamic feeling to it. But this may or may not be agreed upon by anybody, and maybe it's just me, but I felt like kind of as an analog to our industry, now there were innovative things there, and we'll talk about those. But the most innovative thing about the show that I found was going from the hotel to the Las Vegas Convention Center in the Tesla Loop or the Vegas Loop or whatever you want to call it, that underground tunnel that was created by the Boring Company. And then now there's kind of like this multiplicity of having the or irony or whatever you want to call it. By design, it is by design, but having the Teslas drive right through that tunnel from the hotel underground to the Las Vegas Convention Center. I kind of was thinking about that when you and I were talking about earlier. It's the classic version, kind of a modern take on a classic version of on-site and off-site prefabrication coming together and then fully integrated to the customer experience. There's not much in construction that is that way, but you saw a video of it there. It was pretty fun taking that. I did it as much as I could, and it was very fast, much faster than any other ways of getting around.
It was super fast, and the lines went really quick, and they just had Tesla after Tesla lined up in all the different models. They had the airplane model. I don't know all the names, the doors fly up. So you're right. So offsite wise, they used all prefabricated panel systems to create the actual tube itself. Right. And I think that's where you bring the offsite and the onsite together. And that's the same we talked about not too long ago, the new Apple building, the big round one, that was all prefabricated offsite as well. And a lot of people don't know that. I mean, this isn't new stuff. The commercial industry has been using offsite construction for a long, long time. We're just seeing it more in the residential space, and it's becoming a little more prevalent and a little bit more adopted by the consumer who knows very little about it.
Right. It's much more adopted. Say, 8 to 11%, depending on who you listen to, in the commercial industrial complex for construction spending. Right. With some sort of prefab. A lot of that, probably a third of that or more, is MEP, and the rest is some sort of semblance or assembly of different forms of high strength steel and cold form steel. But it kind of reminded me of the most successful project I was on was while I was at Nichiha, working with a company called Standard Drywall and HKS, the architects. And I'm free to share this information from them because they've been sharing it and they said I was. But it's really interesting that that was a combination of offsite and onsite prefab. The steel studs were cut offsite, and then they were delivered to the site, and there were truss table or assembly tables set up there where they could then be put together, insulated, MEP, cladding, windows, waterproofing, all that stuff not in that order. People might say something about that on the video, but then it was assembled on site, and they saved, over $1 million in scaffolding to do that. So it's not really about one technology or the other. Sometimes it's kind of all of them.
Yeah, and you know what? It's going to be a hybrid approach, like you're talking about, and I do agree with that. And let's break it down a little bit before we talk about some of the products at IBS. What are you seeing as far as the technologies that are being adopted in the space, such as, you come from the facades industry, right? From Nishiha. So you got prefab facades, we got mass timber, cold form steel, all of which you're mentioning. How do you see this adoption curve happening? Is it happening? And do you see it kind of like a hockey stick? Is it a U? What do you see happening here?
Right. I think it's, in my estimation, it's going to be a slower hockey stick. But eventually, we talked about how time is speeding up. And that's not just what we're feeling and what I'm feeling because I'm getting older. It's that the industry is speeding up innovation. And as the economy gets more global and from a construction side, that's going to happen. And when I think of things that are driving that innovation, and some of them sleepily, for instance, cold form steel. A lot of the folks in cold form steel in construction, new construction, commercial, tenant improvement, they started out as small drywall installers, and then they added steel stud, and then they started adding some prefab, and then they got a Howick machine or whatever, and then they got set up in a little warehouse. Now they're in a bigger warehouse, and pretty soon, before anyone knows what's going on, they're doing $200-400 million a year in prefab. I think that's a bit of a sleeper. Eventually, though, you don't get to mass market in total construction spending until you get to the residential market in some fashion, mixed use probably, and hospitality and big conversions to residential are probably the two biggest segments that would drive that into residential. Mm-hmm. But we just haven't seen enough of that. And then that leads to prefab facades, because most prefabricated facade systems are going to be some form of cold form steel. And in that assembly, you're going to have probably three main components to get to the cladding, but there's probably a lot more pieces than that in there. Whenever you have labor-intensive, multi-vendor, multi-trade assemblies that where there's a budget for them, like in commercial facades and retrofits, then that's kind of it helps drive the story. Now you have the energy piece coming in that's helping push that through NYSERDA, the IECC. And, I just ran a report on New York City through the Department of Buildings. They have the report on facades inspections. And, 60% of the facades are failing the inspection for a host of different reasons. Wow. But that's a good catalyst for, okay, we know we've been failing these inspections for a while and we have to pay the fines. Yes, but eventually we're going to have to replace that. What do we do? And I think that's another big category that needs to be watched. And then the third one is mass timber. Mass timber is interesting because if you look at the analog that we know in the industry that's ubiquitous, really ubiquitous, I don't know if that's redundant, but that is ubiquitous, is engineered wood products, glulam beams, roughly the same concept. Advances in resin have only come so far, but now we're talking about putting the wood fiber together in a different assembly, a different configuration, different technologies like Dow laminated, cross laminated, nail laminated, whatever the case is. Those are all things that are fairly, they could be fairly uniform and sized easily by people in the local in the market. But I think that a lot of that is happening kind of the sexy projects, if you will, that they're one-off projects. They're starting just the way glulamps and EWP started, which is where everyone's engineered individually. Those, in order to get adopted, they're going to have to get easier to use, easier to buy, easier to sell. Everyone that's known me for a long time, I use that: easy to buy, easy to sell. So those are kind of the three categories I find that are getting a lot of momentum and perhaps sleepily.
For sure. I mean, 60% of the facades in New York City are failing. That's kind of scary if you're walking down a sidewalk.
Well, it doesn't mean they're failing. It means they're failing in inspection from an energy standpoint, not from a structural standpoint. Good clarification.
All right, perfect. So they're failing from an energy standpoint, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, some of the facades are really old. Then they weren't thinking about energy back then. They were just thinking about how they keep water out, or the weather out, or protect the shell. Even though that wasn't done the way we do it today either. So let's talk about the adoption of mass timber. At the show there was mass timber there. Mercer was there. We spent a lot of time with Mercer. They just bought the new Katera, CLT, not the new. They repurposed CLT Katera plant, and they brought it back to life. Now, with that said, they're also looking at the residential market, but they're also looking at mid-rise buildings too, 8 stories, 12 stories, on up. It's going to be a while before people really catch on to this, or do you think they're already catching on to this? And can we afford it?
Well, I think over time, when you have experience effects and you get more factories, a little bit more competition, and then you have factories getting up to design. A lot of them are designed for, let's say, 100% of capacity, but it takes forever, seemingly, to get to roughly kind of 91 to 95%, which is where you want to be a manufacturer. I feel like one thing we have to watch there is not just the number of plants, but how profitable they are and how long they stay in business.
Yeah.
And really to see kind of from a business side, business case, but then also look at them as kind of as close to this cold form steel market as you can get with wood. And what I mean by that is in those factories, most of them, you could do finger jointed studs and sell stud stock. You could do glue lam beams and sell glue lam beam stock. You could do wall panels, floor panels. You could do all sorts of different things. And before you have to actually sell something that's a much bigger ticket that maybe take harder to get into the developer pipeline, or more time, I should say, or need more willing participants to do that, maybe volumetric modular. So the beauty is in some of these factories, you can do all of those things. Whereas say if you're in a volumetric modular wood frame factory, they're not really scaled to add product extensions on the side to say, just do panels or maybe build trusses for somebody or something like that can keep the plant busy and going to jump to a second shift, which is so important. Getting folks to a second shift is the number one most important challenge that these manufacturers need to overcome to get to profitability and long-term ability to open more factories.
So when you say a second shift, you're talking day shift and night shift, right?
Right.
Got it. Just wanted to make sure we clarify that.
Yeah. And that is almost always like some ancillary product. And building products manufacturing, in order to open up a new line or a new factory, a lot of times you start making something there, repositioning product between plants to be able to sell something else that will sort of help get that line up and running and improve hiring and training and getting people embedded in the culture. And then you can add, bulk up that manufacturing in the second shift. But there is a little transition time there, and you really need another product to make that happen.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I think we're going to see that hybrid approach. I do see modular starting to use CLT and mass timber, especially as they start, making the studs and everything else that they're making. The more automation that comes in, the better lumber we're going to need to be using as well, depending on how that's going to work. Jen put a comment there in the private chat, similar to what British Offsite is doing. They are taking a hybrid approach to their mid-rise building with their panel system and insulation values and what they're actually using. So there's examples of this stuff already out there happening. But again, it comes down to the mass adoption of it. Why does it take so long, Tim? I mean, it's there for the taking. Is it price? Is it bad? Is it poor marketing? Is it just not enough resources to get the material? All the things you said. Which one's at the top of the list?
Well, I didn't say these things kind of on purpose. There, it actually comes down to one word. And if anyone who's read the book Crossing the Chasm, it's really the word credibility. And along the way, you see that. Let's in terms of prefab, and we can go back to engineered wood products and glue lams. The resin technology did improve to be able to be used more easily on site. But until they got to uniform span tables, number one, and number two, where they could basically approach the market from a standpoint of getting into residential, they didn't really have a mass market appeal. How did they do that? They had to make it easier to buy and easier to sell for all the intermediaries to be able to sell that product. And how they did that was increase the credibility through documentation. So they had case studies, they had PR in newspapers and stuff like that. And it wasn't just sexy projects. The sexy projects aren't sustainable. You need the mass appeal through residential, high volume, high production projects. And so how do you get that? You have to document the ones that went well, the ones that had warts, and publish it all and be totally transparent, get the engineers on board and get the local municipalities on board. And that's what it takes to make it happen. But they're not going to believe a story. They need to see the documentation.
Yeah, well, the documentation, absolutely right. You gotta obviously prove, and as we keep talking about on the show, put the data out there. The data is what everybody looks at today. It's no longer a handshake, right? I'll promise you it works. What do you see being adopted faster, if that's the right word? More use of cold form steel or CLT and mass timber?
I think cold form steel will get there faster. The number one, much more capacity as more equipment becomes available, because there was this tough time in COVID with getting machinery built overseas, where the different places where they make the machines for cold form steel production. But that's now catching up, like most things. And mass timber is going to it takes longer to open those factories, even though you could, like with timber, I think it's Timber Age. They're in Colorado. They have originally started with a very small prototype facility. You need a ton of those to address the mass timber market. Whereas, and it takes long to get those under commission and then built, maybe a couple of years. Whereas if you can get a Howick machine now, you can start producing. And in the meantime, not only could you produce for your own projects, you could produce for other people's projects. You could sell to ABC Supply or something. You have all these different channels. So because you have that flexibility, and because it's well known and is prescriptive construction, and the engineering fits pretty much 99% of all projects, then it just makes a better case for getting there first. But it doesn't mean there's not enough in the market for both, because there's the mass timber folks that do really want to use that product, but they just aren't there yet with engineering or production or availability in their area.
Yeah, for sure. So let's go to some comments here, Tim. And Henry Mickelberg's humble opinion: if you are misguided enough to produce timber volumetric units over steel, then engineered timber is the only solution.
Well, yeah, thanks, Henry. Good to see you. That's a really good comment in terms of the ability to make. So there's two things playing into that, especially in the U.S. market. And it's different than, say, in the UK or overseas or in Europe. But in the U.S., it's very unlikely that a mill or a building materials distributor or dealer or something like that will be displaced by the manufacturer coming in and saying, like, we're going to sell these. These places that build 500 boxes a year, we're going to sell them direct our building materials that we make. That no one wants, most people don't want channel conflict there. So it's really hard to buy better and to get the kind of quality you need and have enough volume to get the kind of machine grade quality that you want and need to build that higher end level or quality of volumetric out of timber or wood, which is, I think, where he's at. They call wood framing timber framing. So, and with steel, obviously, a very uniform product. It's high, the tolerances are very tight. It's easy to use, easy to get. And in that respect, it will, for volumetric, it will be probably much faster growing in the States and Canada and South America than it will be wood.
Well, I mean, that's it, though. But if you're looking at CLT, that has very little tolerances. I mean, you can get to zero tolerance on that as well.
Right.
That's the value between the two.
Right. And then, so you have this kind of where everything comes together in the different types of construction. You have certain projects that are just made for, tight tolerance, very high quality product. But maybe the owner doesn't want steel for some reason or whatever the case is. Those are where mass timber components can really fit in. And I was kind of wonder with international show, because you guys have this huge reach in, Australia and UK and Europe, they call like our 2x4s timber framing. But here in the US, it's, we call timber framing, like, building with large timbers or mass timber, something like that. But regardless, there's this sweet spot in, say, the type 4, type 3 construction, where mass timber is a really, really good fit and can be on par with the quality of steel and the uniformity of steel.
So I'll give you a little story, right? So I had the privilege of being on stage with Ben Bogey in the Performance Construction Zone, and one of the panels we were demonstrating was a Mercer mass timber panel, and Todd Bayreuther was with us, and we're putting this
I
thing
love
together
that.
putting it together before the day of the show because it's just easier to ship it in. And it was just a wall section to show that, the floor and the studs and the headers and everything. And we're putting it together, and man, we were struggling with it a little bit. And I said, to Todd, I'm like, Todd, there's no tolerance. He goes, no, I made it to zero tolerance for the show. I'm like, but we're not on a square jig putting this thing together, so we had to get it all. I mean, once you had it square, bam, it just everything fit like so like a rubber glove, so snug. You could have been a thief. It was so tight on the fingers.
It could have been a thief. I love Jerry's comment there. You can actually build with timber to very tight tolerances. Yeah, no, not everyone buys the same studs and wood and plate that
that's right.
that Integras use. That's for sure. But very good point. Thanks, Jerry.
Well, here's a comment from Clark Kidd on YouTube. Where do you see the most growth potential for mass timber, both in terms of types of projects and regions, Pacific Northwest, California, East Coast, etc.? Yeah, well, I got my own opinion on this. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, proximity is not nothing. We've seen over the last few years how important shipping logistics is, and having partners and resourcefulness there is great. But there are limitations and no matter what the product is. But in terms of the segment, if I'm thinking segmentation and targeting and positioning for mass timber, then I'm thinking repeatability. Segments of construction that have a high repeat. Say I have a project in Bellingham, Washington, a bunch of townhomes. They would be perfect for mass timber, in my estimation. And then let's say proximity, that's important. There's a certain amount of miles where it starts to make less and less sense. Doesn't mean it doesn't make any sense, just it starts to make less and less sense depending on the mode of transport. And then that's from a positioning standpoint. When I'm thinking of targeting, who are the right partners I would go after with, say, mass timber? They would be partners that can invest in the operation, maybe partners that can invest time and people in the operation, if not money. And it's going to be someone that has the resilience and has the long view, say with the build to rent sector, where they're doing repeat buildings. They have the long view to construction technology, and they have the monetary resources to either invest time and or money in the process. But certainly it will affect cash flow in some cases. So those are things to consider in terms of how to position and target.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head, as they like to say. But there is, with so many of these companies, a lot of growth in the mass timber industry here right now. I don't think, to answer the question on where you're going to see the most of it, I think there's a lot of it in the Northwest at the moment, in that area. But the expansions to come east and south is huge right now. So I think we're going to see a large growth pretty much across the Midwest all the way through the Northeast over the next couple of years. My humble opinion.
I don't want to give away the answer to this, and there's probably some subjectivity to it. But if you go to Google Trends or use SEMrush or Ahrefs or something like that, and you search these long tail terms for different forms of mass timber, you're going to see the areas where people are searching those. And you can even check down into say what category that person is searching, what profession they're in. And you can really start to get some forecasting in on where the long-term demand could be coming from, say, 2 to 3 years from now.
So where do you find that again?
Well, Google Trends is free. SEMrush, which is search engine marketing rush.com. I think there's several of them out there. I don't know, there's probably 30 or 40 different ones. My favorite is Ahrefs. Yep. So Ahrefs. But Google Trends is free, and you get a lot of information off of that.
All right, perfect. As always, there's some free knowledge for everybody out there. Greg Ugoldi, look who it is.
Hey, Greg, good to see you.
The past chair, NAHB. Great job, Dave and Jen. Tim provided a lot of great information, as he always does. So appreciate you, Greg, tuning in as always. And man, did we have fun at the Sheryl Crow concert. I have to
Oh,
tell
yeah,
you.
I missed that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we had it. I was getting it on. I was dancing. I was having fun, and they kept trying to catch me on camera. I'm like, nope, not
You don't
happening.
camera enough on your own show, Dave.
I know. I can't. Yeah, that's right. Demita Chavez says, especially for Florida, to adopt sustainability SOS.
Yeah,
I hear
I
you, right?
think from the standpoint of her comment there, all those areas in the South where you have these conditioned, cool spaces and the hot exteriors. Fortunately, building science is becoming real building science is becoming more prevalent and adopted there. Wherever you have that sort of movement in the market, that dynamic always begs other things to come in. Like, come in here with this technology, come in here. We're listening because we realize we have, condensation in the walls. We didn't know it was so bad over all these years. There's all these things that municipalities and designers and builders are much more aware of now than they were even 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, for sure. So I went ahead and I typed in the Google Trends mass timber. Why don't we share what's going on there, and we'll show what came up. Doesn't that sound like fun, Tim?
Yeah,
like fun.
Great. I think you can do it US and worldwide and all those sorts of things.
Yeah. So look at that. There you go. Number 1, Oregon, Washington, Wisconsin, then Massachusetts, Iowa. So we were both right, Tim.
Yep. Not shocking. Not shocking.
Going west to east is what it looks like it's going to do. So there you have it. So if you aren't familiar with Google Trends, which I have not used a whole lot of, but now I am, super cool stuff. So appreciate that insight on there. That always helps our audience understand what's going on, and investors and everybody else that's interested in looking at that. So, all right. So we talked about mass timber. We talked about, prefab, facades and other pieces or components that go into these wall systems a little bit. We talked about cold form steel. What about volumetric? Is it going to grow? Are you going to see it? Are you going to see more growth out of it? Do you see it being a leader in this industry, or do you see it just kind of feeling a specific niche across the country?
Well, volumetric steel for sure, 100%, especially in hospitality, mixed use. I see when you look at 2 to 4 unit building permits, residential building permits, most of those are 4 unit. Those are going to take off because it makes much more sense for individual investors and house hackers to buy those and get into a rental unit. And there are entire communities of fourplexes being built across the United States, 200, 300, 400 buildings at a time. So that's a big segment of the build to rent. And I can see the thanks for the comment, Demita. That was awesome. So I can see that being a segment that could use volumetric, really could use it, and even in cold form steel or say like a moment frame type configuration. With wood, it's a little different. I feel like there are very few real leaders with wood volumetric. And VBC certainly is one of them, and forever who else I'm missing. I'm sure they're going to say something about this. But the factories that I toured and saw, and with job sites I went to, there's definitely professional polish needs to be applied. Yeah. There's definitely more marketing strategy needs to be applied. The second shift, I can't overstate how important getting to the second shift with some product, whether it's pods or panels or whatever it is, some sort of jumping off point to be able to get to the point to where you have 10, 15, 20 people that you can have on a second shift. Yeah. Now the pressure's on to ship those kind of projects. And when you're at like 200 dwelling units a year of wood frame volumetric, it's just like you can be kind of happy in that zone and kind of be okay until things in the economy are okay. But you can kind of be okay there for a long time. But we need people to jump into the second shift.
Yeah, we do need people to jump into the second shift. So here, I'm gonna take this way off track right now. So this is something Jerry, I see Jerry's in the audience too. Jerry and I have spoke about several times when he was at Integra and even past then is, all modular manufacturers are panel manufacturers as well, right? They don't look at it that way. And to me, it would always make sense to have those 2 product lines as separate lines. One feeds the other feeds, the folks that aren't doing panel. And that could open your second shift if you just look at how you do it a little bit differently. Is that kind of your thought process on this when we come to diversifying and what we're doing?
Right. And I think what's going to happen first, and this could be fortunately or unfortunately, depending on which side we're sitting on, I think you're going to have the turnkey framers and the large builders and the component manufacturers, say trusses, floor systems, those sort of, they will go more volumetric faster, and they will and can and have more money to, and more sophistication and organization and upstream dollars to do it, to get there sooner than adding shifts and factories through our legacy builders.
Yeah. Love it. I love it. Well, let's say hello to a couple other people. Carson Holmquist is out there. Let's go. Hello from sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. Carson Holmquist.
Sorry, I missed you, Phoenix.
Hey, that's Mr. Stream Logistics himself right there, and his team, and by far the best shipping company that I know of that is taking it to the next level with tech. They are a proud sponsor of us, and we support them wholeheartedly. If you want a team that's really going to help you go to the next level, and I don't just say that, I truly mean it, Carson's great. And he came to a lot of our presentations today. I kept running into him. Sorry, I didn't have much time to chat, but it was a busy show. So
they're very sophisticated, organized, and responsive. I have heard that throughout the industry.
Yeah, no, they really are. So, and it's awesome to watch their success. So, all right, enough of you, Carson. I got to move on to Michael Bruce here. Hey, what's up, Michael Bruce? Good afternoon from the Gulf Shores, Alabama. You need something. Right. Michael Bruce is not a sponsor, but he is a long-term friend of the show. He does 3D scanning of foundation systems and all that. He used to do it for all the big utility companies going to those big power plants. He could scan everything down to the nuts and bolts and bring it into, the software system. So super cool. You don't want to set off-site on an unlevel foundation. Ask Jerry McCaughey about that. He'll make you rip the whole darn thing out and do it right. If you're a master at anything, you better be a master at it, as he would say. And we got Buzz Holwitzer in the house. Hardy on.
Hardy, nice. That's an old Hardy reference. That's funny.
I love it. I love it. All right, Tim, did we miss anything that we really wanted to cover today? Like, what should people be looking for from you? How about this? Why should people even call you? Like, what are you doing? I mean, you're a heck of a nice guy. You got more hair than me. It's spiked. You live in Cozumel. I mean, you're moving before I can take advantage of coming down there and staying in your house with my family. So, but honestly, what's going on in your world? And, I want to do business with Tim Sims. What do I do?
Well, number one, if you want to zoom off, you guys want to zoom off to Cozumel, we'll still meet you here. And
I'm in
Cabana Beach. So I think one thing I've noticed is talking with building product manufacturers, and this may have been the case, and I just wasn't paying attention over the years, but it seems like there's a huge desire, maybe need, to get more involved with some part of prefab, offsite industrialized construction, modular, whatever the case may be, or all of the above, 3D construction, cellulose, wood printing, whatever it is, to understand that channel, those products, the technical constraints and opportunities. And there are building product manufacturers that are investing in the space, not to compete, but to say, where could we invest with you? Where could we put a team that will help and collaborate with your R&D team, with the modular and offsite manufacturers and fabricators, to make things easier in their factory, in the offsite construction factory, make things easier or in transit. How could we talk with Stream Logistics and as a building product manufacturer to make sure we're making products that are going to go downstream as easily as possible, then to the job site? How can we make it easier on the setters and stitchers and the folks involved on the sites? There's much more. It's moved beyond curiosity to actual investment. You can see it when you look on LinkedIn, you can see all these job titles and job openings that are in the category, but it's building product manufacturers hiring for these to take care of these offsite construction factories. And I think that is a very important thing you're going to see a lot more of, and everyone should be encouraged to not only just get that collaboration going, but see what kind of strategic partnerships and even strategic debt and equity rounds could be established in those conversations to really push innovation.
Yeah. So, and I agree with that. And I got a great video, so don't go anywhere. The Tesla loop that was just sent over to me from our video guy. I want to show everybody this as well. But who are those building tech enablers that you're seeing? Are there some building product companies with a big appetite for offsite? Are you starting to feel that and see that?
Yeah, and I would tell you who they are, but people can find it on their own. Think of the big brands, okay? Because there's a certain point when you get to that, you need to expand. You need to do line extensions. You need to figure out new markets to go after. And this is fortunately, thanks, large part to what you and Jen do, is raising awareness, and all the different content providers out there raising awareness. People pay attention to these things. I'll give you an example. Yeah. I got called by a Canadian lumber producer, just out of the blue, and they said basically that their CEO or someone in their leadership said that they were under orders, this person that called me, to find out, would 3D printing offset their business or displace their business, and if so, when and how? And those are the kind of questions that people need to be asking. And the bigger companies that have a lot to invest and a lot to lose, especially if they're publicly traded, they are smartly investing in these, but also large privately owned building product manufacturers are also investing in this space. So, and I think you could find those probably a lot in job openings on LinkedIn and Indeed.
Yeah, I agree with that. And even at the International Builder Show, and I know we didn't talk a whole lot about it, but we found ourselves on stage and in a lot of these booths with some of these really, really large manufacturers of product for that reason. It's becoming more and more popular. This year at the show, there was more building systems than ever before. Right. There was more time on stage between myself and Ken Semler and all these other people that have been in this space for a long time than ever before. So the writing's on the wall. I think it's here to stay. It's going to grow. And I think if the building suppliers of products are not looking at how they fit into offsite, they're already behind the curve.
Right.
They're already behind the curve because everybody else has already been knocking on their doors. So just word to the wise.
Yeah. And that's the people that are calling me. So that's how those conversations get started when people hire me, to connect them, those 2 or 3 different people, including developers and architects. Who's involved in this conversation? How do we roll up our sleeves, get sweaty and dirty together, and figure these problems out? And there are people willing to do that, and that's who I'm talking to.
For sure. All right, you want to see the Vegas loop, everybody? A good clean video of it here. Let's see what we got. That's loud. There you have it. A little bit of the Vegas loop there for everybody. So
that's great. Good job, Vince.
Yeah, 5 minutes before the show, I'm like, can you send me just a quick snippet of the loop? We want to show the loop. So outstanding that he was able to do anything in that short amount of time. But had a lot of fun this year. All right, Tim, we're out of time. That's it. Over.
Wow, see, we were talking about how fast time moves.
Time does go by fast. Tim, what was your favorite thing of the International Builder Show other than the people and the excitement? Was there anything?
Yeah, there were a couple things that really stood out to me. I love the startup zone. There's, like you mentioned it earlier, there's so much happening there that there's just not enough real estate to show it there. But I loved Edie's and the whole Be Public team's presentation. Yeah. I'll give you just a really quick snippet. I went to their website for a client. I submitted plans. They were very quick to get me back pricing. It was like probably the easiest prefab experience I've had ever. And then the other one was Mercer Mass Timber. I mean, what they are positioned to do is kind of off the chain. So those are the 2 big things that stood out to me.
Yeah, I agree with you. So the 2 big things for me was the amount of building systems and offsite conversation that was happening. It was huge. I was on stage several times a day, and I also got to do. I also got to show Edie's wall panel on stage with Ben Bogey. So that was really cool. Be Public Prefab, and then also she was in the 412 Startup Zone pitch where we had 12 companies, only had 4 minutes to tell you their idea, and within 1 hour to do 12 companies in 4 minutes. I only had to gong. I had a gong, Tim. I was gong, and their videos
That's a
would
challenge.
shut
I don't
off.
think I've ever said anything for less than 4 minutes.
I know, and but that was pretty cool. But I'm going to show you. Here's the winner of that. You guys want to see who the winner was? We're going to have them on the show. They're already signed up. Planted. This is a bunch of SpaceX engineers. This is cool stuff. You can check them out yourself, but imagine they're making everything out of grass. How much more sustainable is that? Right. I don't know if you just go outside now, you cut your grass and you donate it to Planted, I guess. I don't know how it works, but we're going to find out.
Going to this should read through the technical documents. They're very, very tight.
They are very, very tight. So there's a whole bunch of great stuff coming up, a whole bunch of products that we have found that we'll be showcasing on the show as well and having a great time with it. Tim, don't go anywhere, but that's a wrap for today. I'm super excited.
I love it. Thanks for everyone for joining.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. All right, listen, we appreciate you joining us today. We will see you Wednesday at 1 o'clock and then again BS Friday, 1 p.m. Hopefully Mark's got his voice back. He was hurting on the way out of there. He was talking so much. And he won a social award as well. That's right. Our good friend Mark won a social award at Uber Woods, which was always, always great and well-deserved. That guy is more connected than anybody I've ever met in my entire life. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Don't go anywhere. My name's Dave Cooper and Tim Sims, stealth mode, always. We'll see you next time. See you, Tim. Stay right there.